The stars look different out here, Captain Taman thought as he stared through the viewport of the Indomitable. 3 months into humanity's first journey beyond the solar system, and they had finally found what they were looking for, or rather what had found them. The alien ships appeared without warning. One moment the sensors showed empty space, and the next, 5 vessels surrounded the human exploration ship. They were beautiful in a way that made human engineering look crude, smooth purple hulls that seemed to flow like water, with no visible weapons or engines. They just hung there in the darkness, silent and waiting. Taemin stood on the bridge, his hand resting on the command chair. He wore the dark blue uniform of the United Earth Fleet, patches from old wars still visible on his shoulder. Beside him, Lieutenant Hana checked her weapons console for the 3rd time in as many minutes. She was young but steady, with the kind of calm that came from years at the shooting range. "Captain, they're hailing us," said the communications officer. "Put it through." The view screen flickered and an alien face appeared. It was humanoid enough to be unsettling. 2 eyes, a mouth, something like a nose. But the skin was pale blue, almost translucent, and the proportions were just wrong enough to trigger something ancient in Taemin's brain. This was not human. "Greetings, unknown vessel," the alien said. The translation software worked perfectly, turning the strange sounds into clear Korean. "I am Commander Velkith of the Veltharis Empire. You have entered our space. Identify yourselves," Taemin straightened. "I am Captain Taemin of the exploration ship Indomitable, representing Earth and humanity. We come in peace. We mean no intrusion." Velkith's expression was hard to read, but something about the tilt of his head suggested amusement. "Humanity? We have not heard this name before." "You are new to the stars, yes?" "Yes. This is our first journey beyond our home system." "How quaint." Velkith leaned back in his chair. "Normally we would escort you back to your borders and warn you not to return. But curiosity compels me. Come aboard my ship. Let us meet properly. Bring your senior officers. We will discuss your people." The communication ended before Taemin could respond. He looked at Hana, then at Engineer Daewon, who had just arrived on the bridge. Daewon was thin and nervous, always adjusting his glasses even though they never moved. "It could be a trap," Hana said quietly. "It could be," Taemin agreed. "But we came out here to meet new civilizations. We can't run at the first opportunity." He turned to the crew. "Prepare a shuttle. Hana, Daewon, you're with me, and bring Ambassador Ji-won." 20 minutes later, they were crossing the dark space between ships. The shuttle felt tiny compared to the massive Veltharis vessel. Up close, the alien ship was even more impressive. It must have been 3 times the size of the Indomitable, and it gleamed like polished glass. The docking bay was pristine. White walls, soft lights, and air that smelled like flowers. A group of Veltharis waited for them, led by Velkith. He was tall, nearly 7 feet, and moved with the grace of someone who had never known real gravity. "Welcome aboard the Infinite Grace," Velkith said. His smile showed too many teeth. "Come, I will show you what a truly advanced civilization looks like." Ambassador Ji-won stepped forward. She was older than the rest of them, with gray in her hair and hope in her eyes. "We are honored by your hospitality, Commander. We hope this is the beginning of a friendship between our peoples." "Perhaps," Velkith said, but his tone suggested he doubted it. The tour was clearly designed to impress. They walked through corridors lined with screens showing star charts and technical displays that Daewon stared at hungrily. They passed recreation areas where Veltharis lounged in comfort. Everything was clean, efficient, and impossibly advanced. But it was in the armory that things went wrong. Velkith had been explaining their weapon systems, pointing to racks of sleek devices that looked more like works of art than guns. "Our plasma rifles can cut through any known armor," he said. "Perfect accuracy at any range. And most importantly, no recoil. The energy beam has no mass, you see. There is nothing to push back." Hana had been quiet throughout the tour, but now Velkith's eyes fell on the weapon at her hip. It was her grandfather's hunting rifle, modified for space use but still recognizably human. Old metal, wooden stock, mechanical action. "What?" Velkith said slowly. "Is that?" "My service weapon," Hana replied. Velkith stared. Then he laughed. It was not a kind laugh. Other Veltharis joined in, their voices echoing off the pristine walls. "Your weapons have kickback?" Velkith said between laughs. "Your own guns push against you when you fire them? How do you aim?" How do you fire multiple shots? This is absurd. A Veltharis scientist named Quarren stepped forward, studying Hana's rifle like it was a museum piece. Fascinating. This uses controlled chemical explosions to propel a physical projectile. We abandoned such technology 10,000 years ago. The inefficiency is staggering. Every shot wastes energy pushing the weapon backward instead of forward. It works, Hana said quietly. Her jaw was tight. I'm sure it does, Velkith said, his voice dripping with condescension, in the same way that beating rocks together works to make fire. Tell me, do you also use combustion engines? Do you still burn fuel for energy? Taemin felt his own anger rising, but Ji-won put a hand on his arm. Stay calm, her eyes said. We need them as allies, not enemies. But Velkith was not done. I have an idea, he said. Let us conduct a demonstration. A friendly competition. Your primitive kinetic weapons against our advanced energy systems. We will fire at the asteroid field nearby. You will see what true military technology looks like. It was a trap and everyone knew it. A way to humiliate the humans and establish dominance. Taemin wanted to refuse, but he saw the calculation in Velkith's eyes. If they backed down now, they would be seen as weak. And word would spread to other civilizations. Humanity would become a joke. Agreed, Taemin said. We accept your challenge. Velkith's smile widened. Excellent. We will convene at the asteroid field in 1 hour. This will be entertaining. On the shuttle ride back to the Indomitable, nobody spoke. Finally, Ji-won broke the silence. We shouldn't have agreed to this. We didn't have a choice, Taemin said. Hana was checking her rifle, hands moving with practiced precision. Captain, permission to speak freely? Granted. Let's show them what kickback really means. Taemin looked at his weapons officer and saw the same fire that had won Earth's unification wars. Humanity had always been underestimated. Always been told they were too violent, too aggressive, too primitive. But they were still here. Hana, he said quietly, prepare the railguns, all of them, and load the mass driver, sir? Daewon looked nervous. The mass driver hasn't been tested in combat conditions. The recoil alone could— I know what it could do, Taemin interrupted. That's exactly why we're going to use it. The Indomitable moved toward the asteroid field, followed by 5 Veltharis ships. On the bridge, Taemin stood before his crew and thought about all the times humanity had been underestimated. All the times they had been mocked for their crude ways and violent nature. Today, he said, we remind the galaxy why Earth's weapons have kickback. Not because we're primitive, but because we understand something they forgot. Power has a price, and we're willing to pay it. The asteroid field floated in the darkness like frozen mountains. Some were small, no bigger than cars. Others were massive chunks of rock and ice kilometers across. Perfect targets for what was about to happen. The Velthari ships arranged themselves in a neat formation, their hulls gleaming under the distant starlight. The Indomitable held position opposite them, looking rough and battle-worn by comparison. Taemin stood on the bridge, hands behind his back, watching the display screens. All ships in position, the navigation officer reported. Good. Taemin opened a channel to the Velthari's flagship. Commander Velkith, we are ready when you are. Velkith's face appeared on the screen, still wearing that condescending smile. Excellent. We shall begin with a basic demonstration. Observe and learn, Captain. The channel closed. Taemin glanced at Hana, who sat at her weapons console with her hands steady on the controls. She had been quiet since they left the Velthari's ship. Too quiet, you okay? Taemin asked softly. I'm fine, sir. Her voice was calm, just thinking about kickback. One of the Velthari's ships moved forward gracefully, its movement smooth as silk. It positioned itself in front of a medium-sized asteroid, maybe 50 meters across. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a beam of bright purple light shot from the ship's hull. There was no flash, no explosion, no visible recoil. The beam simply appeared, connecting the ship to the asteroid like a laser pointer. Where it touched the rock, material vaporized instantly. The beam moved in a perfect line, cutting through the asteroid like butter. Within seconds, the asteroid split in two, both halves drifting apart cleanly. Impressive, Daewon muttered from his engineering station. Another Velthari's ship fired, this time at multiple small asteroids simultaneously. 3 beams lanced out, each hitting a different target. All 3 asteroids exploded into dust, particles scattering in perfect spherical patterns. The ship itself never moved, never shuddered, never showed any sign that it had fired at all. Velkith's voice came over the open channel, broadcasting to all ships. As you can see, our weapons are perfectly efficient. All energy goes into the target. None is wasted. We can fire continuously without any stress to the ship or the crew. This is the advantage of advanced technology. Quaren, the Velthari scientist, joined the broadcast. The principle is simple. Contained plasma, magnetically focused into a beam. The energy release is controlled and directional. No explosive propellant, no mechanical action, no recoil. It is elegant. It is efficient. It is civilized. The word hung in the air. Civilized. As if humanity's weapons were not. Taemin saw Hana's knuckles go white on the controls. He saw Daewon frown at his screens. Even Jiwon, always diplomatic, looked offended. "Your turn, Captain," Velkith said. The mockery in his voice was barely hidden now. "Show us what your primitive kinetics can do. Try not to hurt yourselves with the recoil." More laughter from the Velthari ships. They were enjoying this. Taemin took a slow breath. Then he opened the internal channel. "Hana, standard combat protocols. Single railgun. Medium target. Show them what the Indomitable can do." "Yes, sir." Hana's fingers moved over her console. "Target selected. Medium asteroid, approximately 60 meters diameter. Distance 10 kilometers. Railgun 1 charging." The lights on the bridge dimmed slightly as power diverted to the weapon systems. The Indomitable had been built for war, not elegance. Every system was designed for one purpose, to destroy. "Railgun charged," Hana reported. "Firing solution locked. Fire. Firing." The ship lurched. Not violently, but noticeably. The inertial dampeners compensated for most of it, but everyone on the bridge felt the push. It was like being in a car that suddenly accelerated. The lights flickered. The hull groaned, and in the asteroid field something beautiful and terrible happened. The railgun round was simple. A tungsten slug, 20 kilograms of dense metal. No explosives, no warhead, just mass and velocity. The magnetic accelerators pushed it to an insane speed in a fraction of a second. When it left the barrel, it was traveling at 20,000 meters per second. The asteroid didn't break. It didn't split cleanly or vaporize neatly. It exploded. The tungsten slug hit with the force of a small nuclear weapon. Rock that had existed for billions of years turned into plasma in an instant. The explosion was white-hot, bright enough to make the sensors dim automatically. A shockwave of superheated gas and debris expanded outward in a sphere of destruction. The Velthari's observation ships, positioned a safe distance away, suddenly didn't seem so safe. Their shields flickered and flared as the shockwave hit them. Alarms went off. Ships that had been perfectly stable moments before now rocked and swayed. The open channel was silent. The expanding debris cloud began to cool, glowing red now instead of white. Where the asteroid had been, there was nothing but a field of tiny fragments and ionized gas. "What?" Velkith said slowly. "Was that?" Taemin allowed himself a small smile. "That was a railgun, Commander. Electromagnetic acceleration of a physical projectile. We call it a kinetic kill weapon. The energy output," Quarren's voice cracked. "That's impossible. Your ship is too small to generate that much." "It's not about generation," Daewon interrupted, unable to help himself. "It's about storage and release. We store the energy in capacitors, then release it all at once. Yes, it causes recoil. Yes, it stresses the ship. But the results speak for themselves." Another long silence. Taemin could see the Velthari ships on his display, their formations disrupted, their shields still recovering. "That was," Velkith said carefully, "unexpected, but surely that was your maximum power. You must have used your full capacity for that shot." Hana looked at Taemin. He nodded. "Negative," Hana said into the open channel. "That was 15% of capacity, Commander. A standard combat shot. Would you like to see what we consider a serious threat?" The silence stretched even longer this time. "Captain Taemin," Velkith said, and the mockery was gone from his voice now. "Perhaps we should end this demonstration. You have made your point, have we?" Taemin looked at his crew. Jiwon was shaking her head, warning him not to push it. But Hana was looking at him with fire in her eyes. And Daewon was pulling up power calculations, already preparing the next shot. "I think not, Commander. You invited us here to show us what advanced technology looks like. Now let us show you what human engineering looks like." He turned to Hana. "Lieutenant, target the large asteroid, the one that's 2 kilometers across. Load the mass driver, sir." Jiwon stood up. "That's excessive. We've made our point, have we?" Taemin didn't take his eyes off the view screen. They called us primitive. They laughed at our weapons. They suggested we were too stupid to build proper technology. He opened the channel again. Commander Velkith, this next shot will demonstrate the main armament of the Indomitable. I recommend your ships increase their distance to at least 50 kilometers. Your shields may not handle the electromagnetic pulse otherwise. The what? Velkith sounded genuinely alarmed now. The electromagnetic pulse. It's a side effect. Not intentional, just physics. When you release this much energy, strange things happen to the local electromagnetic field. The Veltari's ships began backing away. Quickly, not so confident anymore. Hana worked at her console, her movements precise and practiced. Mass driver loaded. Target locked. This is going to be rough, Captain. Even with dampeners, we'll feel this one. All hands brace for impact, Taman announced shipwide. Secure all loose items. Engineering, maximum power to inertial dampeners. You're really going to do this, G1 said quietly. They wanted a demonstration, Taman replied. We're demonstrating. The mass driver was the Indomitable's main weapon. Where the railguns fired small slugs at high speed, the mass driver fired large slugs at insane speed. The projectile was the size of a bus made of solid tungsten, and the magnetic accelerator ran the entire length of the ship's spine. Charging, Hana said. The lights dimmed to emergency levels. Every non-essential system shut down. All available power flowed into one purpose. On the Veltari's ships, Taman imagined them watching their sensors, watching the energy readings climb higher and higher, watching and realizing that humans had built something that should not exist on a ship this size. Charged, Hana said. Her voice was steady, but Taman could hear the excitement underneath. Firing solution confirmed. Mass driver ready. Fire. The universe seemed to hold its breath. Then the Indomitable fired. The recoil was incredible. Despite the dampeners, everyone on the bridge was thrown forward. The ship lurched backward like it had been punched by a giant. Systems sparked and flickered. The hull screamed with stress. For a moment, Taman thought they had pushed too hard, that the ship would tear itself apart. But the Indomitable was built for this. It held together, and in the asteroid field, a 2-kilometer mountain of rock and ice ceased to exist. The mass driver's slug hit at 0.3 light speed. The kinetic energy released was beyond comprehension. The asteroid didn't explode. It vaporized, instantly, completely. For 3 full seconds, there was a miniature star where the asteroid had been, bright enough to wash out every sensor in the area. When the light faded, there was nothing left. Not fragments, not debris. Just empty space and a rapidly expanding cloud of ionized particles. The electromagnetic pulse washed over the Veltari's ships like a wave. The emergency lights were still flickering on the Veltari's flagship when Commander Velkith finally managed to restore communications. His face appeared on the view screen, and for the first time since they met, he looked genuinely shaken. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something between fear and respect. Captain Taman, Velkith said carefully, how much power did that require? On the Indomitable's bridge, engineer Day-Wan was frantically checking his systems. The mass driver had performed perfectly, but the energy drain had been enormous. He looked up at Taman and gave a slight nod. Everything was fine. The mass driver operates at variable power levels, Taman said, keeping his voice neutral. That shot was approximately 30% of maximum capacity. We reserve higher settings for capital ship engagements. The silence that followed was deafening. Taman could see other Veltari's officers crowding behind Velkith, all staring at their own sensor displays with expressions of disbelief. Quarren, the scientist, pushed forward. His pale blue skin had gone even paler. That's not possible. Your ship is too small. The energy requirements alone would need a reactor 3 times your vessel's size. Unless, he stopped, his eyes widening. Unless you're storing it differently. How large are your capacitors? Day-Wan couldn't help himself. He leaned toward the screen, adjusting his glasses nervously. We don't use traditional capacitors. We use superconducting magnetic energy storage coils. They're wrapped around the ship's entire internal frame. Basically, the Indomitable itself is a giant battery. But the heat dissipation, Quarren protested. The energy loss is acceptable, Day-Wan interrupted. Yes, we lose about 20% of stored energy to heat and electromagnetic leakage. Yes, it's inefficient by your standards. But when you need to throw a bus-sized chunk of metal at 1/3 of light speed, Efficiency becomes less important than results. Taman held up a hand, stopping Day One before he could launch into a full technical explanation. Commander Velkith, I believe we've demonstrated our capabilities sufficiently. Shall we return to more peaceful discussions? Velkith seemed to shake himself from his shock. Yes, of course. Captain, I would like to invite you and your officers back to my ship. We have much to discuss. I believe we may have started this relationship poorly. I believe so too, Taman agreed. An hour later, they were back aboard the Infinite Grace. The atmosphere was completely different now. The Veltharis who had been laughing earlier now watched the human delegation with cautious respect. Some even looked nervous when Hana walked past with her rifle. They gathered in what Velkith called a conference chamber. It was a circular room with a holographic display in the center, currently showing a replay of the mass driver shot. The asteroid's destruction played over and over, frozen at the moment of impact. I owe you an apology, Velkith said once they were seated. He looked uncomfortable, as if the words were difficult. I underestimated your people. I made assumptions based on limited information. This was foolish. Ambassador Jiwan leaned forward. We accept your apology, Commander. And we admit that we also made assumptions. We expected to find civilizations similar to our own. Clearly, the galaxy is more diverse than we imagined. Quarren was still staring at the holographic display. I don't understand your weapons philosophy. We evolved away from kinetic weapons because they seemed barbaric, inefficient. Why did humanity embrace them? Hana spoke for the first time since they arrived. Because they work. Our plasma research is centuries behind yours, but we understood projectiles. We understood momentum and energy transfer, so we perfected what we could build. But the recoil, Quarren insisted. It limits your rate of fire. It stresses your ships and your bodies. Why not eliminate it? Because we can't, Day One said simply. Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. To throw something forward with that much force, something has to push back. You can minimize it, dampen it, distribute it, but you can't eliminate it. Not without breaking physics. We eliminated it, Velkith said, but his voice was less certain now. No, Taman corrected gently. You changed the weapon. Your plasma beams have no mass, so there's no recoil. It's elegant and it works for you, but it's not more advanced. It's just different. Quarren was quiet for a long moment, studying the human delegation. Finally, he said, Show me your personal weapons. I want to understand. Hana hesitated, then carefully removed her rifle and placed it on the table. Next to it, she set her sidearm, a heavy pistol that looked brutal compared to Veltharis designs. Quarren picked up the rifle carefully, as if it might explode. It's heavy. 3 kilograms, Hana confirmed. The weight helps manage the recoil. You brace it against your shoulder, lean into the shot, and let your body absorb the impact. Your body? Velkith looked horrified. You absorb the recoil with your own flesh? Yes, but that must hurt. That must cause injury. It bruises, Hana admitted. If you fire too many rounds without proper form, you can damage your shoulder. But we train for it. From childhood, we learn to handle recoil. It becomes natural. Quarren carefully put the rifle down and picked up the pistol instead. It was smaller, but somehow looked even more dangerous. And this? 45 caliber, Hana said. Semi-automatic. Effective range about 50 meters. Holds 12 rounds. Can I test it? Quarren asked hesitantly. Hana looked at Tai Min, who nodded. We can arrange a demonstration. But not here. You'll need proper safety equipment and instruction. They moved to a shooting range deep in the Veltharis ship. It was normally used for plasma weapon practice, but they adapted it quickly. Hana cleared the pistol, checked it twice, and handed it to Quarren. Hold it like this, she demonstrated. Firm grip, both hands. Feet shoulder-width apart. When you pull the trigger, the gun will push back hard. Don't fight it. Let your arms flex and absorb the recoil. Quarren took the weapon nervously. He aimed at a target 10 meters away. His hands were shaking. Breathe, Hana said softly. Squeeze the trigger, don't pull. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. The pistol kicked back violently and Quarren nearly dropped it. He staggered, his arms flying up, his face a mask of shock. The bullet had gone wide, missing the target completely. That was... Quarren looked at the pistol like it had betrayed him. That was violent. Yes, Hana said simply. That's the point. Every shot reminds you that you're holding a weapon. You can't forget what you're doing. The recoil makes you deliberate. Velkith had been watching silently. Now he stepped forward. May I try? Hana loaded a fresh magazine and handed him the pistol. Velkith's hands were steadier than Quarren's, but not by much. He aimed carefully, braced himself, and fired. The recoil still surprised him, but he managed to keep hold of the weapon. The shot went low but hit the target. A small hole appeared in the practice material. I see, Velkith said slowly. He fired again. This time he was ready for the recoil. The shot hit closer to center. I see what you mean. Each shot is significant. It demands attention. He fired 3 more times, each shot getting better. When the magazine was empty, he carefully set the pistol down and flexed his hands. My arms hurt, he said, sounding surprised. That's normal, Hana said. The first time is always rough. But you adapt. Quarren was studying readouts on a handheld device. The kinetic energy transfer is remarkable. Lieutenant Hana, how many rounds can you fire before your body gives out? In combat conditions? Maybe 200 rounds with the rifle before my shoulder goes numb. More with the pistol. 200, Quarren repeated. And you consider this acceptable? In 200 rounds, I can eliminate dozens of targets. So yes, it's acceptable. They returned to the conference chamber. The atmosphere had changed again. The Veltaris were no longer looking at the humans with mockery or even simple respect. There was something else now. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. Your species evolved differently than ours, Velkith said as they sat down again. We come from a low-gravity world. Our bodies are fragile by your standards. We could never absorb the recoil of your weapons. It would break our bones. And we could never build your plasma weapons, Taemin countered. The precision and control required is beyond our current understanding. Different environments, different solutions, but your solution is so... Quarren searched for words. Brutal, violent, every shot causes pain. Every weapon risks injury. Why? Because the alternative is worse, Hana said quietly. An enemy who doesn't know you're armed. A weapon that fails when you need it most. At least with our guns, we always know what we're getting. Pain, yes. Recoil, yes. But reliability, certainty, power. Velkith was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I called your weapons primitive. I was wrong. They're not primitive. They're honest. They show their cost clearly. There's honor in that. Thank you, Taemin said simply. Daewon pulled up technical diagrams on the holographic display. If you're interested, we could discuss a technological exchange. Your shield technology would be invaluable to us, and perhaps our kinetic weapons could complement your plasma systems. Complement? Quarren looked intrigued. How? Your weapons excel at precision and continuous fire. Ours excel at raw damage and armor penetration. Together, they would cover each other's weaknesses. The conversation continued for hours. Technical details, cultural exchanges. High Arbiter. Thelvo stood before the council chamber's main display, watching the recording for the 3rd time. The massive asteroid's destruction played in perfect detail, slowed down so the council could see every microsecond of the event. The tungsten projectile appeared as a streak of light. Then came the impact, the flash, the impossible burst of energy that turned solid rock into plasma. Behind him, the 7 members of the Velthari's High Council sat in their floating chairs, silent and still. They had been silent for the past 10 minutes, ever since the recording began. Play it again, Council Member Reshinal said quietly. Thelvos gestured, and the display reset. They watched the destruction again, and again no one spoke. Finally, the eldest council member, Ventara, raised a delicate hand. How is this possible? Commander Velkith's report claims this was only 30% of their maximum capacity. According to their engineer, yes. Thelvos confirmed. The human ship is essentially a weapon platform disguised as an exploration vessel. Or perhaps the other way around. Their technology is crude, another council member protested. Velkith's initial assessment was correct. They use chemical propellants and physical projectiles. We abandoned such methods millennia ago. And yet, Thelvo said softly, their crude technology just destroyed a 2-kilometer asteroid in 3 seconds. Our plasma weapons, even at full power, would need several minutes to achieve similar results. If they could achieve them at all. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. They were not used to being outmatched. The Veltharis Empire had been the dominant military power in this sector for generations. Their technology was refined, their tactics proven, their superiority unquestioned. Until now. Tell us about these humans, Ventara commanded. Everything. Thelvos brought up new displays. Images of Earth appeared, a blue-green world that looked almost peaceful. Their home planet is a death world by our standards. Gravity 1.3 times standard. Atmosphere with high oxygen content, which makes fires more aggressive. Weather patterns that include violent storms, temperature extremes, and something they call earthquakes. A harsh world, Reshinal observed. Very harsh, but that's not the worst part. Thelvos pulled up biological data. The humans themselves are the problem. They evolved as persistence hunters. Do you understand what that means? The council members looked at each other uncertainly. It means, Thelvos continued, that they evolved to chase prey until it died of exhaustion. They can run for hours without stopping. They can survive injuries that would kill most species. Their bones are dense, their muscles powerful, and their nervous systems are designed to tolerate pain that would send us into shock. He displayed footage from the shooting range, showing Hana firing the human pistol. The recoil was visible even in the recording, the weapon kicking back hard enough to blur the image. This is a standard sidearm. The recoil force is approximately 200 newtons. It would break a Veltheris wrist. They fire it casually. Barbarians? Someone muttered. No, Thelvos corrected sharply. Not barbarians, survivors, there's a difference. He brought up more data, this time showing the Indomitable's specifications. Their ship design philosophy is entirely different from ours. We build for efficiency and comfort. They build for durability and power. Look at the hull thickness. Look at the redundant systems. This ship is designed to take damage and keep fighting. But why? Ventara asked. Why design for damage? Why not design better shields? Because shields fail, Thelvos said simply. And when shields fail, you need another option. The humans always have another option. It's how they think. Multiple redundancies, backup plans, fail-safes. They assume everything will go wrong and plan accordingly. He pulled up tactical analyses. More concerning is their military philosophy. We reviewed their history from the data they shared. In the past 500 years, they fought 17 major planetary wars. 17. We fought 3 in the same period. The council chamber was silent again. They're warriors, Thelvos continued, not by choice but by evolution. Their planet made them strong. Their history made them aggressive, and their isolation made them innovative. While we refined our existing technology, they had no choice but to develop everything from first principles. Reshinal leaned forward. Are they a threat? That depends on us, Thelvos said carefully. Commander Velkith's mockery almost made them enemies. His apology may have saved us from a war we might not win. Surely you exaggerate, a council member protested. They have one ship. We have thousands. One ship that could engage 3 of our cruisers simultaneously and have good odds of winning, Thelvos countered. He displayed combat simulations he had run. Our plasma weapons would have difficulty penetrating their hull armor. Meanwhile, each of their railgun rounds would go through our shields like they weren't there. The kinetic energy is simply too high. He showed another simulation, and this assumes they don't use their mass driver. If they do, the first ship hit is simply gone. No chance for shields, no time to evade. Just instantaneous destruction. The council members watched the simulations with growing concern. But they're peaceful, Ventara said, though her voice was uncertain. They came here to explore, not conquer. Yes, Thelvos agreed. They are peaceful, for now. But consider what happens when they're not. Consider what happens when someone threatens their home world, or attacks their colonies, or hurts their people. He pulled up psychological profiles that Quarren had compiled. Humans have a concept they call proportional response. When attacked, they respond with appropriate force. But they also have another concept called total war. When sufficiently provoked, they commit everything. No restraint, no mercy. Complete destruction of the enemy. That's insane, someone whispered. That's survival, Thelvos corrected. Remember, they evolved on a death world. They learned that half measures get you killed. When you fight to win completely. Reshinal was studying the data carefully. What do you recommend, High Arbiter? Thelvos turned to face the council directly. I recommend we treat humanity as equals. Not as primitives, not as threats, but as potential allies. They have strengths we lack. We have strengths they lack. Together we could be formidable. And if they refuse alliance, Ventara asked, then we pray we never become their enemies. The council debated for another hour. Finally, they reached a decision. Humanity would be offered a formal alliance treaty, with full diplomatic status and technology exchange agreements. Commander Velkith would remain the primary contact, and Quarren would lead the scientific exchange program. As the council adjourned, Thelvos returned to his private office. The recording of the asteroid's destruction was still playing on his personal display. He watched it again, studying every detail. A message notification appeared. It was from Quarren, who had remained with the human delegation. "Hi, Arbiter, I've made a discovery. The humans carry personal weapons as standard equipment. Not just military personnel, civilians. Their ambassador carries a concealed pistol. Their engineer has a knife with a 20-centimeter blade. This is normal for them." Thelvos sent a reply. "How do they avoid violence?" The response came quickly. "That's the interesting part. They have extensive cultural rules about when weapons can be used. Social contracts, laws. The weapons are for protection, not aggression. But the capability is always there." "An armed society is a polite society," Thelvos murmured, remembering an old human phrase from the data files. Another message arrived, this time from Velkith. "Request permission to share our shield technology with the humans. They've offered to help us understand their kinetic weapons." Fair exchange, Thelvos considered. Sharing military technology was always risky, but the alternative was worse. If humanity developed shield technology on their own, they would have no reason to maintain good relations with the Veltharis Empire. "Permission granted," he sent back. "But proceed carefully. Make sure they understand this is a gesture of trust." He turned back to the display, watching the asteroid die again and again. Somewhere in the universe, other species were watching humanity too. Some would see opportunity. Others would see threat. The Crethun Dominion, in particular, would be interested. They consumed new civilizations like humans consumed food. Thelvos opened a secure channel to his intelligence division. "Begin monitoring all transmissions regarding humanity. If the Crethun show interest, I want to know immediately." "Understood, High Arbiter. What's our concern level?" "Maximum," Thelvos said quietly. "If the Crethun attack humanity before we establish our alliance, we lose a potential partner. If they succeed in conquering humanity, they gain access to kinetic weapons technology. Either outcome is unacceptable." He closed the channel and sat back in his chair. The display showed the asteroid again, frozen at the moment of impact. Such power. Such brutal, honest, terrible power. The humans had been alone in the universe for their entire existence. They had developed their technology in isolation, with no one to learn from and no one to fear. Now they were here, among the stars, carrying their violent history and their death-world strength with them. Thelvos hoped the galaxy was ready for them. He wasn't sure he was. Another message arrived. This time from the Science Division. "Preliminary analysis of human weapons complete." 6 weeks had passed since the demonstration in the asteroid field. The neutral station where they now gathered was enormous, a spinning wheel of metal and lights that served as a meeting place for dozens of different civilizations. Captain Taman stood at the viewport of the human delegation's quarters, watching ships come and go. Some he recognized from the databases, others were completely unknown. "Strange to think we're part of this now," Hannah said, joining him at the window. She was wearing her dress uniform, the rifle replaced by a ceremonial sidearm. 6 weeks ago we didn't know any of this existed, and now we're negotiating treaties, Taman agreed. "The universe moves fast." A chime at the door announced a visitor. Ambassador Jiwan entered, looking tired but pleased. "The Veltharis delegation is ready. The ceremony begins in 1 hour." The ceremony was formal and elaborate, held in the station's main conference hall. Representatives from 8 different civilizations attended, all curious about the newest species to join the galactic community. The Veltharis had made sure everyone knew about humanity's demonstration. Word had spread quickly. Commander Velkith stood at a podium, looking far more humble than he had during their first meeting. His dress uniform was decorated with symbols Taman had learned meant honor and respect. 6 weeks ago, Velkith began, his voice amplified through the hall. "I made a terrible mistake. I judged a species I knew nothing about. I mocked their technology and dismissed their capabilities. I was wrong, and I'm here today to formally apologize." He turned to face the human delegation. "Captain Taman, Lieutenant Hana, Engineer Daewon, Ambassador Jiwan, on behalf of the Veltharis Empire, I apologize for my arrogance and my ignorance. You showed me that advancement takes many forms, and that different does not mean inferior. Taemin stood and approached the podium. They had practiced this, but it still felt strange to be part of such a formal ceremony. Commander Velkith, on behalf of humanity, we accept your apology. We also admit our own mistakes. We assumed your mockery meant hostility. We responded with an excessive show of force. For that, we apologize as well. They clasped hands in the human style, then touched foreheads in the Veltari style. The hall erupted in applause, or the equivalent for species without hands. High Arbiter Thelvos took the podium next. Today we formalize an alliance between the Velthari's empire and humanity. We will share technology, coordinate defense, and work together toward mutual prosperity. This is not just a treaty. This is a friendship. The actual treaty signing took another hour, with dozens of clauses and agreements that the lawyers had spent weeks negotiating. But the important part was simple. The Veltharis and humans would stand together. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Taemin found himself surrounded by alien diplomats, all asking questions about Earth and human technology. He answered as best he could, aware that every word would be analyzed and reported back to their governments. Hana had attracted her own crowd, mostly military officers curious about human weapons. She was demonstrating her pistol, unloaded and safe, letting them hold it and feel the weight. The recoil management is fascinating, a tall alien with green scales said, examining the weapon's grip. You've designed the handle to distribute the force across the entire hand. Humans have been building firearms for over 1,000 years, Hana explained. We've had a lot of time to refine the details. Daewon was in the corner with Quarren and several other scientists, their conversation so technical that even Taemin couldn't follow it. Something about magnetic field harmonics and energy storage efficiency. They were sketching diagrams on holographic displays, arguing cheerfully. Jiwon found Taemin at the refreshment table. We did it, she said quietly. First contact, and we not only survived, we thrived. You're giving me too much credit, Taemin replied. If Velkith had been less reasonable, this could have gone very differently. But he was reasonable. And so were you. That's what matters. A Veltharis officer approached, one Taemin didn't recognize. Captain Taemin? I am Weapons Master Corbin. I oversee training for our military forces. I have a request. Go ahead. Would you be willing to conduct a joint training exercise? Your Lieutenant Hana has explained some of your marksmanship techniques. I believe my students could learn much. Taemin glanced at Hana, who nodded eagerly. I think that could be arranged. When? Tomorrow, if possible. I have reserved the station's main combat range. The next day, Taemin watched as Hana stood before a class of 30 Velthari soldiers. They looked nervous, almost afraid. The shooting range was adapted for multiple species, with adjustable gravity and various target configurations. Good morning, Hana began. Today we're going to learn about kinetic weapons. Not how to build them, but how to use them effectively. Who here has fired a projectile weapon before? 3 hands went up hesitantly. Good, you'll help the others. First lesson, respect the weapon. A plasma rifle won't hurt you if you hold it wrong. A kinetic weapon will. The recoil is real. The danger is real. Understand? Everyone nodded. Second lesson, recoil is not your enemy. It's feedback. Every shot tells you something. If you learn to listen, you become a better shooter. She demonstrated with her rifle, firing at a target 50 meters away. The shot was perfect, dead center. See how I lean into it? I'm not fighting the recoil. I'm accepting it. Working with it. The Velthari students tried, using modified weapons with reduced recoil for training. Most of them struggled at first. Their bodies weren't designed for this kind of stress. But Hana was patient, adjusting their stances, correcting their grips, teaching them to breathe and time their shots. By the end of the session, several of them were hitting targets consistently. One student, a young female named Soravan, was actually good at it. Her shots grouped tightly, her form solid despite the recoil. Natural talent, Hana said approvingly. Have you considered specializing in kinetic weapons? I didn't think I could, Soravan admitted. Our bodies aren't strong enough. Strength isn't everything. You have excellent control and patience. Those matter more. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Daewon and Quarren were unveiling their joint project. A crowd of engineers and scientists gathered around the prototype weapon, murmuring in various languages. We call it a hybrid kinetic plasma system, Daewon explained excitedly. It combines the best of both technologies. Watch. The weapon fired and everyone gasped. The projectile was solid tungsten, but wrapped in a plasma sheath generated by Veltheris technology. It flew faster than a normal kinetic round, and when it hit the test target, the plasma sheath exploded outward, while the tungsten core punched through. Double damage, Quarren said proudly. The plasma burns and disorients while the kinetic impact penetrates, and the plasma sheath actually reduces air resistance, increasing range. What about recoil? Someone asked. Comparable to a standard railgun, Day One admitted. We couldn't eliminate it completely. But the plasma generation uses Veltheris shield technology to distribute the force across the weapon frame. It's much more manageable. The demonstration drew representatives from several civilizations, all interested in the technology. Taman watched from the back of the crowd, impressed. 6 weeks ago, they had been alone. Now they were collaborating, creating something neither species could have built alone. That evening, there was a private dinner for the senior members of both delegations. The conversation was relaxed now, friendly. They shared stories about their homeworlds, laughed at cultural misunderstandings, and made plans for future cooperation. I have news, Telvos said during dessert. Not good news, unfortunately. Our intelligence division has detected Krethan activity near human space. The table went quiet. The Krethan? Taman asked. A hostile empire, Velkith explained. They believe in forced assimilation. They conquer species and absorb their biology and technology. They've destroyed dozens of civilizations. How strong are they? G1 asked quietly. Very strong, Telvos admitted. They outnumber us 5-1. Their technology is different from ours. Organic, self-replicating, hard to counter. We've fought them 3 times in the past century. Each time we barely held them back. And now they're interested in humanity, Taman said. Yes, your demonstration attracted attention. The Krethan respect power, and you showed considerable power. They'll want to either control you or destroy you. The dinner ended early. Back in their quarters, the human delegation held an emergency meeting. We need to contact Earth, G1 said. They need to know about this threat. Agreed, Taman said. But we also need to prepare. How long until the Krethan reach human space? According to Veltheris intelligence, maybe 6 months, Daywan said, pulling up star charts. Depends on their route and whether they stop to assimilate other civilizations first. 6 months to prepare Earth's defenses, Hana said. Not much time. Which is why we need this alliance, Taman said. Alone, humanity might not survive. Together with the Veltharis, we have a chance. The next morning, they held a joint military planning session, human and Veltheris officers working together, sharing tactics and strategies. It was awkward at first, the 2 species approaching warfare from completely different perspectives, but gradually they found common ground. Your precision strikes could disable Krathun command ships,